Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Brad Stevenson, SVP of Marketing and Sales Enablement at Level Agency, and I'm super excited for the conversation today. As I was getting ready for this, I was just doing a little research into some of the weirdest corners of Reddit, and it can be a wild place. So I found a subreddit today where there's a subreddit called Potato Salad that's all about John Cena, and there's a subreddit called John Cena that's all about potato salad. So like I said, it can be a crazy place and it sometimes can be a scary place for brands, which is what we're going to get into today a little bit, because Reddit is the only platform where users actually have more power than the advertisers, which is amazing for the humans, a little scary for brands sometimes. But that's an awesome thing about this platform. More than 121 million daily active users on the platform. So between the sheer number of users and the platform's influence on the modern search experience, it's becoming impossible for brands to ignore. And that's why we're here today. So before I get into specifically what we'll be covering, let me introduce you to the lovely people you'll be hearing from today. We have, first of all, Sam Goodman, who is a sales and marketing leader at Reddit. Hi, Sam.
Hey.
We have also joining Sam from Reddit, Andy Schneider, who is a senior manager of global scale creative at Reddit. Hi, Andy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. And then from our side, we have Matt Yulu, who is our SEO manager here at Level, who lives at the intersection of organic paid and AI visibility every single day. So we're happy to have you as well, Matt. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
And I think I practiced saying your last name 50 times before the start, and I think I just butchered it. We call Matt B. So it's also not that hard of a last name to say. Come on. So today we're going to cover three things. First, we're going to cover how Reddit actually influences AI search answers, what gets surfaced, why, what signals matter. We're also going to talk about how brands can show up authentically, so that you don't, get involved in some disingenuous, sort of overly salesy approach to how you're showing up in Reddit communities. So you don't want to get roasted. And then third, how paid Reddit ads can actually drive real performance while still feeling native to the platform. And so I'm really excited about that. One quick note before we dive in. Please stick around until the end. We are going to have a QR code you can scan to get a free AI visibility scorecard readout for your brand from Level. And one person who signed up and registered today will be randomly selected for a full AI visibility audit on us. So stick around. So Sam, let's get into it. And I do want to start with you. And give me 1 second. I've got. We're going to get started talking about how Reddit is being influenced by, or how Reddit is helping to influence AI search answers. And so my first question for you is, what is it about Reddit communities that is actually sort of becoming influential for, and so I do want to highlight, like, so for people who are listening, like, if you search something, ask a question, now you're getting not just the blue links, you're not just getting the keywords results, you're getting all sorts of things, including AI overviews in Google that are heavily influenced by Reddit. So Sam, why is that? How is Reddit helping to kind of shape those answers, and what's going on there? Talk a little bit about that for me.
Sure. Well, first off, Brad, thank you so much for having us here today. And I loved your note. We always ask our customers and our partners what their favorite subreddit is. So now we know you have two, at least, favorite subreddits. And I think what's interesting about your question is not only have people shifted search away from keywords to looking for answers, but now we see that about 2/3 of searchers actually switch between multiple LLM tools when they're performing any given search. So it's not just about figuring out how you show up in ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. It's about how you show up in all three of them. And I think there's four real reasons that Reddit has become the heart of a lot of that. The first is, simply put, we have 20 years of community conversations built around interests and passion points and decisions that we're trying to make in our lives. To put that into perspective, Reddit has about 440 million weekly active unique visitors. Over half of the US visits weekly. And they're coming to explore over 100,000 different communities that are based around all of those things that they care about in their life, decisions they're trying to make, areas they're trying to learn more about. And every single one of those communities is led by conversations that are human-led. So all of our communities are human-moderated. And all of the posts are generated by real humans and then human verified. So if you're familiar with Reddit, you might be familiar with the upvote and downvote mechanic, but that's when Redditors will go in and actually say, hey, this comment, this question, this post is more relevant to this topic than others, which then get downvoted by humans. when you bring all of this like human sort of led interaction, it's a very different kind of community than what you see in other places. And it builds a lot of trust. So in addition to being one of the most cited sources, Reddit is one of the most trusted platforms for product discovery. It doesn't hurt that Reddit communities and Reddit language is easier to catalog, but that's why AI comes to Reddit. Human-led language makes it easier to add context and color to the other information sources, and is extremely easy to categorize and bring into the conversation. Alongside sort of being the #1 most sourced social platform in many cases, 9 out of 10 times we are co-cited with non-conversational websites. So if you were to ask a question about a brand or a service, an LLM might go to that service's website, brand website, and get general information, and then they'll still add color to it from Reddit because of all of the other context we can bring to the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Sam.
Yeah.
So, in talking about that, AI doesn't just pull random threads, and Andy, I'll let you respond to this. What quality or signal patterns make Reddit discussions more likely to be cited in those AI answers that Sam was just talking about?
Yeah. I mean, Sam was sort of hitting the point there a little bit, but like AI is looking for pattern matching. It's pattern matching for trust rather than popularity. And so some of the signals that it picks up are just consensus across multiple users, right? That's a big one. So a lot of distribution of validation is what's surfacing in LLMs. And so when you have the upvote and the downvote doing that democratization of content for you, it adds a level of credibility to the human word that's hard to find elsewhere. And we also see that some specific experience-based answers or commentary, hey, I am a doctor, hey, I am a plumber, here's my lived experience, those are also surfacing more readily and are harder to find on platforms other than Reddit. And then, of course, since Reddit is largely text-based, we have the luxury of this content being composed in a clear structure. So whether that's a bulleted list or an A/B comparison or a threaded conversation, it's really easily indexable and then dissected. So it's resolved discussions paired with that validation layer that really makes the content on Reddit just ripe for surfacing, like Sam said, against some of that owned content from a brand's website or a Wikipedia page or what have you. So at the end of the day, it's really about Reddit being that scaled word of mouth with these built-in validation tools at scale to ensure that the right content's being surfaced.
I think that
yeah, sorry, Sam, go ahead.
Not to jump in, but I think two notes to add to Andy's great answer is so it shouldn't be surprising, but in doing some work around Reddit's AI visibility, we found kind of two things that I thought were always interesting. One is Q&A posts, unsurprisingly, tend to do very well because they bring a lot of that like pattern recognition to light around things that are going to actually be helpful when you're actually going into a new search model to ask a question. And the second is that for all of the communities that we have, for each topic, we've found that there's usually 3 to 5 key communities that tend to be the most cited within that because of their broad reach, their depth of experience, their depth of information. So, I mean, just to try to make it actionable for those folks on the phone, as you think about trying to explore Reddit for your product, service, industry, vertical, it's important, and we'll talk more about this, to spend time learning which of the communities really have the most influence there too, because it's a critical sort of like subset that make up most of the citations.
Cool, awesome, thank you, Sam. That was a question I was going to have. And we do have some questions rolling in. I just want to remind everyone we will have Q&A for 15 minutes following our 30-minute segment here with our panelists. So we will be flagging questions and getting to those. Matt, I wanted to ask you, when we think about monitoring, measuring presence in AI search via Reddit content, how should brands be thinking about sort of that monitoring of that content and measurement?
So Brad, #1 thing I would recommend to brands, and people might not be aware of this, but you can sign up for Reddit Pro. Excuse me, Reddit Pro is a free suite. It can help you analyze and monitor traffic. You can use it to identify trending topics in natural language phrases that your audience uses. And so you can use that to, an idea would be to seed an FAQ on your website with a lot of that information. Secondarily, I would use Google Analytics, and you can find out the referral traffic coming from Reddit, but I think Reddit Pro is my primary choice.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. So now that we've talked a little bit about how Reddit is influencing, I want to jump to our second topic here, which is about sort of authentic brand engagement in Reddit communities. And everybody's kind of seen this meme, but Andy, I'll let you get started. I want to know, from your perspective, what does authentic engagement look like for a brand on Reddit? And what are some key don'ts and do's when brands actually do show up in threads? And I think you brought some examples today, but let's just start with what is authenticity when it comes to Reddit?
Totally. So this is actually, that was a screenshot of a brand just being authentic on Reddit. But all jokes aside, it's in reality, it's really not about butting in and joining the conversation on Reddit so much as it is about listening and learning and picking up on some of the cultural norms of the communities that you're looking to learn from, be a part of, add value to. So it starts with, we call it lurking and learning, but largely what you should be doing as a brand on Reddit is just identifying the communities in which you have an adjacency to or are being mentioned in, and then seeing what the norms are within those communities, seeing the type of topics that people are regularly bringing to the top of the forum, and then assessing the language and tone. What are the recurring questions that people are asking? And then that little sliver of literally everything else is you showing up when you have a reason to be showing up, when there's a question posed that only you as the brand can declaratively answer. Additionally, every community on Reddit is created to be surfacing value, right? Surfacing valuable, relevant content related to any given topic. So if you as the brand have a perspective that's not promotional, you should feel more definitely inclined to offer it, so long as you're not trying to sell a product or heavily promote the brand. So at the bottom line, the way to think about engaging on Reddit authentically is about thinking about Reddit as a listening platform before a posting platform, right? It's not a megaphone for you to be shouting into. It's a community for you to be integrating into. So you have to do that a bit thoughtfully. And listening is just the best way to start doing that.
Cool. I think you have an example for us of lurking and listening, yeah?
Yeah, I do. But Sam, do you want to speak to this example?
Sure. I think it's, what's great about Reddit is that you get so many signals from users on the platform about what matters to them. And this is just a cute example of Philadelphia cream cheese spending some time listening to the platform and seeing this sort of viral trend go crazy in, I think it was Kitchen Confidential, where this guy spent a near month perfecting a chive chopping technique and asking and committing to continuing to do it until they were perfect. And Philadelphia cream cheese played off of that little moment on the internet to introduce their own chive and onion cream cheese in a very fun, what Andy would call Reddit-like Reddit way. Being self-referential, a little self-deprecating, and bringing it back to things that actually resonate with folks who have been on the platform for a little while and have been interacting with an element of the brand that's so native.
Yeah, I love this example because so often when asked this question, how do I influence my audience on Reddit, right? Because your ultimate goal is to influence a batch of folks, consumers, to be talking favorably about your brand, right? You're not going to show up on Reddit and start spamming with posts and comments, and then that's what's going to get picked up in LLMs. You want to create this cascading effect of influence. So anytime somebody says, how do I influence my my loyalists on Reddit or my doubters on Reddit, and they think, well, where should I be posting? Where should I be commenting? There were no posts or comments left by Philadelphia cream cheese. Simply listening, seeing what's happening on the platform to inform their page strategy. You best believe this ad was screenshot and posted in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different subs, right? So that's how they then garner that cascading influence that everyone's seeking. And it doesn't require posting or commenting. So I love this example.
Andy, thanks for connecting with the youth who are definitely.
You gotta drop the, yeah.
Sorry, Sam, go ahead.
I was going to say there is a world in which brands can find the right way to comment, and I think a really cute example of this is the brand Sonos, the speaker maker, back in, I want to say like early 2024, had a big customer issue. They had a redesigned app that was going poorly. They had product issues, and they introduced themselves onto the platform via Keith from Sonos, a customer service rep who was going to very authentically answer the questions that you had and try to basically be a customer service rep on Reddit. Keith from Sonos became so beloved that when Sonos had a layoff later that year, you had Redditors going crazy asking if Keith was safe, if he had made it through this riff. And in reality, Keith is probably an amalgamation of people going in doing community management. But when you start to think real about how you interact on the platform, you get this opportunity to do something that feels very different. And I think it's always just like a really fun example that helps people feel a little more comfortable bringing themselves into the platform. It's about finding the angle in, and really a human first angle is always the right way.
That's why I host these virtual sessions for the job security, Sam, so that the community can really rally around me. So I think there's a fine line a little bit. And, Matt, I want to ask you, I have a question. You have another example, Sam, I know, for us. But before that, there's a fine line between sort of like what's funny, what's natural, what's authentic, and what is like super cringe, I guess. And how do you find brands? Is it about the people that you put in charge of your social, platforms? What do you find that is successful there in terms of how brands walk that really, really fine line? Because some brands try way too hard, right?
Now, is that for Sam or for me?
It's for Sam, Andy, anyone. This is sort of just a follow-up, Matt. Yeah. So, maybe there's no formula. Maybe it's that magic thing, but I think it's important to think about.
Is the question like, how do you toe that line of like butting in, or what I always tell brands is like, are you adding value to the conversation? Is what you're contributing in service of your brand's bottom line or this community's bottom line? And that's like the 0 to 1 that you have to grapple with. So I'd love if anybody else has a perspective, but that's really as simple as I make it. It's like, are you adding value to this community rather than your brand?
I would add to that it is still the Wild West in a way. Like we don't have the silver bullet for how brands interact organically. But in that vein, I would say listening and learning is always going to be the first step. So you can never really over-index on it, even if you never contribute. As long as you're spending time listening to the community there, you're already doing the right first step. And in doing that, you will probably figure out when the right moments are to join the conversation.
Yeah. So on that note, Matt, how would you think about it from a brand perspective, balancing that when we're listening and when we're learning, and then when we feel like it's the right time to join a conversation?
Yeah. So I think in terms of balancing the listening and learning, I would start with 100% listening initially. And from an SEO perspective, I would use those threads to create a content calendar. Like what kind of questions are people asking? And, I think of Reddit like a people also ask, but on steroids. So you can surface some unique and authentic questions that are likely to have not been answered anywhere else. So, and I also think about using it as like a focus group mentality where you can understand pain points and the hurdles that everyday consumers face. Because a lot of Redditors come to Reddit to help them do research to make decisions. So if you can, so that's a great source for content. And then one more tip would be, in terms of the listening, would be, don't write with AI answers, that those get removed by Reddit. And then in terms of joining, I tried just joining 3 or 4 relevant subreddits to Andy's point earlier, where, find those main subreddits and then just try posting 2 or 3 helpful comments a week.
Yeah. I think the helpful, relevant, actionable things are super important for brands to think about, right? And also you might be saying, well, gosh, nobody's talking about my brand. We're not necessarily a big enough brand for people to have subreddits about us and things like that. And that's okay. Really, it's about, product categories and the industry and things like that you can be joining and learning from as well. So, so organic community engagement is really about, we're talking a lot about trust here, like earning trust over time. It takes patience. But there's also, just like everything else, there is the way to pay to play on the Reddit platform, just like in search and everywhere else, right? If it's like, hey, I know the organic piece of this is going to take time to build that trust. Let's talk a little bit about the paid environment in Reddit, and when it is done right, how it can feel native. And so, Sam, I'd love to start with you talking about this a little bit. What makes paid Reddit ads feel native to the platform versus feeling like traditional creative in other platforms?
I think it's a great question. I think the first thing to recognize, which is what we're talking about today, is that it's really like a flywheel between the two. Like, you need organic and you need paid on Reddit. What is actually interesting is we have found, especially to your point about a small brand who maybe isn't seeing their brand mentioned as much as they would hope to see on Reddit, that there is a positive halo effect from paid media on organic engagement. And that when you start to run paid media on Reddit, you start to see more folks actually talking about your brand. Now, to, I think, accelerate that and invest more heavily into having it done the right way, you have our native ads that really are based on native Reddit behavior. So the two that we highlighted here, we've got on the right-hand side, Ask Me Anythings, or AMAs. This is like a Reddit native version of a Q&A format. It goes back as far as, I want to say, 2007 or 2008, where individuals who have had everything from interesting life experiences to folks who are major celebrities and obviously have had crazy life experiences coming onto the platform and very openly saying, I climbed Mount Everest, ask me anything. Or I traveled across the country on a bicycle, ask me anything. I'm Barack Obama, ask me anything. We have seen incredible engagement with that format of a Q&A because it feels very authentic, it feels very real, it feels very trusted. And so we've brought that to brands. And I think what people are surprised to find is that Redditors want to ask your brand a lot more questions than you realize. So I'll give you just a quick example about it. But the Mayo Clinic, right, this hospital system, they've run over 20 AMAs from different service providers of theirs, who have all just come on to help you answer questions about medical conditions or health concerns. They've done this so often that they've generated a halo effect of organic engagement that we've seen in some LLM questions around the Mayo Clinic, that they've done a good job of changing the way that they interact with patients by using native digital formats like Reddit AMAs. So you have this opportunity to use formats like an AMA to bring you into the community more naturally, but benefit from the scale and efficiency that comes with paid media. A free format, which was the other format you saw there, that's like a native Reddit post. It gives you the room to have a creative canvas of your own, to tell your story, to tell the brand story, what differentiates the brand. And I talk about these two because typically they're pretty high engagement posts, but they also require somebody to lean in with your brand. And in a lot of social platforms, you don't see that happening. You go to Instagram or other social platforms, you're there to scroll or you're there to look for friend content. When you come to Reddit, you're actually coming to learn about a topic and go deeper. So these formats actually foster that opportunity very naturally. And it's a very natural environment in which to do it because people are coming here already to spend more time learning about the things that matter most to them.
Cool. Have brands sponsored AMAs
Yes.
with celebrities and other influential figures? Like, does that work well as also?
It is one of my favorite strategies on Reddit. So once we saw AMAs working so well on an organic front, and we saw brands try to interact with them on an organic front, we introduced what we call the sponsored AMA. So we actually have it productized in an ad format. And the Mayo Clinic example that I gave you were all sponsored AMAs. We've had brands like Orkin Pest Control bring entomologists who are pest experts onto the platform and to answer your questions about rodent or pest invasions. So yeah, we've worked with a number of brands from a sponsored front, and it doesn't just have to be a celebrity. You'd be surprised by the type of expert that Redditors are interested in hearing from.
Cool. So potato salad brand should have John Cena on an AMA.
Exactly.
I think this is what I'm getting. Andy, how should teams?
Pitch it.
Yeah,
let's go.
Yeah. How should teams think about creative formats and messaging that aligns with that Reddit culture and makes it feel authentic? And kind of what role does creative authenticity play? We talk about authenticity in the organic sense. How does that come into play when we talk about paid?
Yeah. So there's a scene in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, the movie, where
love that movie.
Paul Rudd is teaching Jason Segel's character how to surf. And Jason Siegel's on the surfboard. He's like, all right, now pop up. And he like pops up and it's too much. He's like, oh, do less. It's like, just pop up. And he's like, well, now you're just laying there. And I bring up that scene for anyone who has seen it. It helps kind of connect the dots. But ultimately on Reddit, and I sound like a broken record, but you just have to be there to add value. That's whether you're commenting, posting, or earning a ton of eyeballs via your paid media. And to Sam's point, people are on Reddit to learn. So if you can structure your content in a way that caters to that user incentive, provide a Q&A, or your headline can be the question and your static image can be the answer, or provide a comparison. How does your product compare to other products? And be forthright about it. Offer a unique point of view. People are there to learn. People are there to soak up information. And in that paid space is your opportunity to just be plain and simple communicating your value to the consumers on Reddit. They're there to make decisions. They're there to learn. And so they're a very high potential consumer. So if you can get your brand's value communicated as clearly and as native to the platform as possible. And when I say native to the platform, I just mean like non-intrusive, like don't have a bunch of hashtags, not a bunch of emojis. And that also boils back to a little bit of the listening you have to do. Just know who you're speaking to and just have that little bit of intention. And it goes a really long way. As far as authenticity, it really just comes down to knowing your brand. You don't want to show up to Reddit and be something you're not and end up like that fellow kids meme. Know your brand, know the value you have to offer, communicate it clearly. And those simple basics go such a long way.
Cool. Awesome. I also see that the chat is going wild right now. So we're going to get
just do less.
Minutes. We're going to get to some questions. Just do less. Yeah. Matt, last kind of thing before we jump into getting to some of these questions, we're not going to get to all of them. We're going to get to as many as we can. But how do you align when you think about an SEO and organic community strategy? How do you align paid Reddit with SEO and organic participation to kind of reinforce, like, how do you build this flywheel between paid and organic as a brand?
So in terms of how paid and organic can work together and create that flywheel, so you should be listening and learning from the communities, and then once you've done that, start participating, and then from there you're going to pair your organic contributions with a paid campaign. You want to target top, middle, and bottom of funnel, and I would use the organic insights to inform creative and targeting across the funnel, and also learn from those top performing organic posts and think about how you can turn them into ads. So those are my big tips.
Cool. Thank you, Matt. And with that, I want to jump into some of these questions. We've got a bunch of really, really great questions here today, so I really appreciate it. There's the QR code. I hear that the things are freezing occasionally for people, so refresh, I guess, is the word there. So jumping into questions, so hit the QR code, sign up for a free AI visibility scorecard for your brand. Please do that. It's an awesome, really quick scorecard of how you're showing up in AI search results across a couple of different tools. One question here that we have from Megan B. If our B2B company doesn't yet, and we'll let whoever wants to take it. If our B2B company doesn't yet have a presence on Reddit, where would you recommend we start? I want to maintain the authenticity of the platform, but help our AEO efforts, our answer engine optimization efforts. So where do we start?
I can jump in and take that one. And I don't think you'll be surprised to hear me say this, but I will say we have sort of 3 steps for building your visibility on Reddit. The first one is actually always to use paid media, because paid media is efficient, it is controllable, and it is targetable. But I say that as the first step because if you don't have a presence on Reddit yet, or you're not seeing your brand mentioned, we've actually seen that paid media can result in like a 16% increase in positive brand mentions organically for brands that start investing on the platform. So it helps to just generate the conversation. The second step is then to do a lot of the work around organic learning and organic engagement. We have a tool that we call Reddit Pro that you can sign up for that would allow you to monitor your brand mentions, start to understand what communities your brand resonates or your service resonates with, and to start planning how you might contribute and engage with those communities. Once you've done that learning process and you've continued to kind of build the baseline of foundation, the third step is to start thinking about how you create more of those native ads that encourage advocacy or start to build a deeper conversation where we come back to things like free form ads and AMAs. And I will say the two things what I didn't mention before about freeform ads and AMAs that I love most is they live on organically on your profile. So they become this like evergreen source of content for your brand, but also really do a great job of just continuing to generate conversations and mentions of your brand at a higher clip. We can never guarantee what an AEO what an AEO algorithm will pull, but we can help you figure out how to get the right visibility on Reddit.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate that. Another question here from a higher education brand from Selena. Thanks for the question, Selena. I see a lot of discussions about our programs, some complaints or issues from students. How can we use this to our advantage, maintain trust, improve our presence without it seeming like we're creeping, we're trying to control a narrative, if that makes sense? How can we get those results translated into AI's consensus tool? So really this question is about not seeming like you're overly creeping related to controlling a specific narrative if there are complaints or issues, but wanting to be helpful. This question is for anybody.
Yeah, I can take this one. I've handled this exact question so many different times. It starts with understanding the context of the community in which these conversations are happening. So if this is a community that is heavily gated in a way that the rules are structured where they're not looking to hear from brands who offer the service, if this is just a place to share grievances about a certain offering or certain program, then you have to just let them air their grievances and learn from them. And then to Sam's point, that little bit of paid media, that your paid media just be better informed by knowing what's happening in these conversations. If this is a community where the brand is somewhat welcomed, if you see other brands popping in, hey, we offer this, we'd love to talk to you. Thank you for this feedback. If you're contributing to the conversation in a way that is meaningful, in so many words, like you'll actually take their feedback and implement it, then I think it would be welcomed. So I think it starts with understanding the context of the communities that these conversations are happening within, and then a comment that's not self-promotional is typically appropriate. So I would start by just reviewing the rules of the subreddit, and then dipping your toes into addressing user or consumer needs like head on.
Yeah, cool. If I could just add to that real quickly. So pulling the lens back a little bit, the issue becomes for your brand that places, these reviews show up in Reddit, they show up in Google Business Profile reviews, and large language models extract all this. And what happens is those opinions become a fact, essentially. They get repeated in a chat GPT response. Who has the best, I don't know what programs you offer, but let's say healthcare programs. Then if they'll surface things like, you're expensive, I had problems with financial aid, I had problems with these things, and those move you down in terms of your rankings and large language models. So you definitely want to be engaging, but not just in Reddit. You want to make sure you're getting good reviews, take a holistic approach. And if you have real questions about that, you should give us a call.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. We have a question here from Lamar, and this is about what distinguishes Reddit from other social media platforms. So thinking about if you're running things on, you've got LinkedIn and you've got Meta under control, and you're thinking about Reddit, how should people be thinking about adding this to their media mix, and what distinguishes it from some of these other platforms?
I can jump in on that one to start, although I'm sure Andy will have a lot of good insight as well. But I think the first thing to think about is when you look at the landscape of social media platforms, the majority of them are very me focused. I have heard a friend say that Instagram is one of the best places to go and see people living a life that you don't know. Reddit is very we focused. It's one of the best places to go to meet a bunch of people you don't know living a life you really know, because they're all very shared experiences that you're kind of like centered on. When you're thinking about how your brand can best get involved, there's also so many different ways to think about Reddit communities, from interests like aviation to location like Tennessee. So if you're thinking about where it fits in your mix, I would think beyond just the traditional routes that you might or signals you might use on other social platforms, which are typically like audience based, and start thinking about the context that you can find with the 100,000 plus Reddit communities out there.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. Andy, anything to add to that?
No, that was pretty all encompassing. Yeah.
Cool. We have a question from Irva. Do the LLMs see from which markets consumers are, or results on AI are just global generally? Are you seeing that there's any distinction around specific regions?
I'm not sure that we have a good enough view into that yet. That one sits more, I would say, with like an OpenAI or an Anthropic on how they build their algorithm.
Yeah. I know some of this is still very black box, right?
Yeah,
So
I would say Google does. I would say AI overviews do, and I would say that Google very much understands where you are. But ChatGPT, it's not clear, or Perplexity or Claude.
I think it depends on the prompting as well, right? If I'm looking for specific information about a service in Pittsburgh, where I am, I'm going to get relevant results for that. If I ask about the industry, I'm going to get more global results. So I think there's some the prompt tuning. I think that's the other thing that's important for brands to think about is the nature of the prompts that you're targeting, how relevant they are to your business.
Yeah.
Make sure you're not wasting time, fighting for prompts that really aren't going to get you the business outcomes that you need or want. So it's every bit as, if not more important than the old days of keyword selection in the traditional SEO sense.
Yeah.
Let's go to Madison. Madison asks, how would you suggest building karma for your brand's user?
How much time you got? No, it's a great question. If you are a you/brand name, building karma is going to be a bit trickier. If you are you/ and then to Sam's example, Keith from Sonos, that gives you a bit more of an opportunity to interject and say, hey, I at Sonos, I work on the X, Y, and Z team. Here's where the value I can offer this conversation. And then on that comment, you'll get upvotes. That we had an example in the slides from the brand Whoop, and they lurk the r/Whoop community. They don't own that community. They don't moderate that community. But what they do is they find opportunities to either debunk or offer customer support. So here somebody posted about the MLB asking players to remove their Whoop wristbands. And so Whoop wanted to just jump in and say, hey, we see this happening. We're not ignorant to the fact that this is happening. And we simply think that this is an instance where rules that were written pre-wearables are colliding with the way that modern athletes care for themselves. So just simply hopping in and offering a point of view and not linking to the new Whoop or saying, here's a discount for the new Whoop that we're coming out with, or here's why you should buy it, right? Just simply offering your point of view is a great way to just show up in the comment section. And you can see this single comment received 161 upvotes. And the more that you add value like this, the more welcome back you'll be to conversations. So that's how I'd start by building some karma, is just by finding opportunities to comment, add some value.
Cool. Thanks, Andy. I love my Whoop, by the way. We are not sponsored by Whoop. We would absolutely be sponsored by Whoop if they'd like to give us a call. We have a good one here from John. John asks, have you seen AMAs turn ugly, and what are some best practices to avoid that from happening? Or if it starts to happen, how should people who are moderating those be thinking about it? I think the AMAs thing is a really, really important tool for brands, as we've been talking about. And so when we think about sort of some of those guardrails or risk mitigation, what have you seen, and how can brands avoid that?
Giving you a little peek behind the curtain, for a sponsored AMA, the mechanic works this way. You post your prompt to say, I'm so-and-so from this brand, ask me anything. When a Redditor goes in and submits a question, it actually gets sent on the back end to the brand sponsoring that AMA. It goes through a level of auto moderation as well. So to put it lightly, you can filter out negative comments there. We're not out here trying to risk your brand perception or risk the conversation.
But I think I would say, Sam, though, probably not blocking all of those, because you want the opportunity to have genuine response, right?
That is a very sophisticated and advanced take, and I would agree that it is really important to be mindful of the fact that your brand is going to have multiple perceptions on the platform, and that all of those perceptions are things you can learn from.
It's a great question. It's one I love, and I've done countless AMAs, countless promoted AMAs, and it really depends on your goal. Whenever I get that question, like, oh, how can we mitigate risk? I say, well, what's your goal of the AMA? Because there's few levels to it. Sam alluded to one where you can have complete control. An extreme example I like to retell the story of is Vlad, the CEO of Robinhood, did an AMA directly after the Wall Street Bets saga where they pulled the GameStop stock off from being tradable. So obviously the community was like sort of at his throat. He wanted to step in and do an AMA, and his goal was to just be the punching bag, right? He just wanted to let consumers take their energy out on him and just get it out in the open. So he did an AMA in the r/Robinhood community, which is not owned by Robinhood. And the goal of that was to mitigate risk, was to answer the most upvoted questions. Do not let the most upvoted questions go unanswered. So there's ways to achieve your goals and mitigate risk, but there are definitely levels and nuance to doing promoted AMAs on the platform. But it's a very powerful tool when wielded in the right way.
Cool. Good question here from Lori about the Philly cream cheese example. Lori is saying that she sees only 3 posts in the last 4 years organically and maybe 10 comments a year. So did they lurk and listen and then use paid ads to respond? Is that the connection there?
That's exactly how. Yeah, we've been working with Philly for a while, and we have a relationship with them where they show us, hey, this conversation's happening. What do you think? And or we say, hey, this conversation's happening. What do you think? And very few and far between are there strong opportunities to jump in. So that's the approach it's the exact approach we took for the Chive Lord saga, as we call it.
Cool. Question from Spencer, organic question. You mentioned lived experience being an important indicator. Are Reddit influencer programs a thing? So partnering, for example, with power users who have used a product, lived through a program, school offers, or whatever. Are there, what does it look like to have like influencers on Reddit? I know we talked a little bit about sponsored AMAs for brands, but have you seen any of that?
So I think what's interesting about Reddit, and one of the things that makes it such a trusted part of the internet, is that as much as there is this idea of clout and karma for your Reddit username, your Reddit username is actually anonymous. So we haven't really explored the influencer angle here yet, because the whole premise of the platform is built on this idea of community, and that your engagement doesn't have the same payout that it might on other social platforms. That said, there still are power users on the platform. I would say moderators are Reddit power users, and if you're trying to think about how to interact with them in the right way as a brand, it's the same recipe, which is come to them authentically and humbly and ask how you can be of service as a brand within their community. And then the second piece is, I would say if you have an individual who has lived the experience of your program, let's say a student who has graduated from your college, that's a perfect person to use for an AMA, because they have all of the experiences that others want to learn from, and you can help evangelize their experience, promote their experience, and really use that for like a centered or balanced view of the school, the program, the service.
Cool. Question here from Nick. Do you have best practices for how to name a brand's Reddit account? Whoop is Whoop_official, for example. Is it simply about being as transparent as possible? Or are there any other best practices around that?
Transparency is key. That's really what the short answer for that one is. It depends on the resources you have in-house at your brand. If you have somebody who's going to be actively monitoring your Reddit presence, I love to have their first name at brand. For certain lines of business under Google, we actually have name at Google. And then, of course, we have the Google official account too. And when it makes sense for that username to weigh in versus a personal name, it really depends on the resources you have at hand and the discussions you want to be a part of.
Cool. And we have one from Hillary here, which I think is really interesting, is do you see more brands using their brand to respond, or using some mascots or individuals? Which way do you see that going, and do you find one more effective than the other?
That's a great question. I can really only speak anecdotally, and I would say Keith from Sonos is the exception, not the norm.
Okay, cool. We are at time. So I am going to wrap us up. I know there were a few more questions. If you have burning questions and you want to reach out to Level, we'll get those questions answered for you. We're happy to follow up with you. I would say, please scan the QR here, get your AI visibility scorecard. We'll be reaching out to one of you for a full audit of your brand's visibility in AI platforms, AI search results. And please follow Level on LinkedIn, follow Reddit for Business and Reddit on LinkedIn and other platforms. Join communities, start lurking, start learning. And Sam Andy, Matt, really, really appreciate your time today and for you being here. And I appreciate everybody who has joined us today. Please follow us, and we're going to keep doing these virtual insider sessions with our partners, and really just, appreciate you all being here. Sam, Andy, Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Everyone.
Take care, all.
Bye.